Morning, all. All right, so it's Wednesday. We've just got the two games tonight in the National Hockey League. So the preview is mixed with a news of the day board for all you fine people. And we'll start off with Josh Doan. So Josh Doan, a good hockey player, 26 goals in the AHL, gets called up, gets 2 goals in his debut with the Arizona Coyotes. It's a feel-good story, but there's been a lot of talk online about nepotism and doesn't really deserve it, or he's really, really rich. So first off, does nepotism exist in the NHL? At the draft table, yes. I do think that on some level it does, because they go, well, who do we have? Well, we could draft these guys. And, oh, I know that last name kind of thing, right? Oh, I played with his dad or whatever. Or in this case, when Doan was drafted, of course, his father and everything with the Arizona Coyotes organization. And, I mean, it was a feel-good story that he was drafted by them. And was he drafted a bit earlier than he should have been? At the time, he wasn't considered to be as top-notch a prospect as where they drafted him, but it's worked out pretty well for Doan, right? But the idea that, well, he's rich and his family's rich. Well, the reality is that in order to get a kid to the National Hockey League, it can cost you upwards of $100,000. Going from the grassroots when you're starting out as a kid and going through each level of hockey and tournaments and everything you do, it costs parents a lot of money, right? And this is why when people talk about how much money hockey players make and they should just play for fun. It's just fun. It's business, man. Like we're looking at about $100,000 to get your kid to the NHL. So are there a lot of rich kids that make it to the NHL? Yes, because of the way that the sport's set up, right? It's something that's existed since I was a kid, but it's way worse now than when I was a kid. The fact that my parents couldn't afford to put me in hockey is just because my parents were generally broke. But in this case, now when you look at it, it's so expensive between the equipment, the fees, and everything you're going to have to do in order to get your kid even into the conversation of being drafted, and then going through potential injuries and all of that, and then if they're living away from home, whether it's NCAA at age 17 for Macklin Celebrini, for instance, right? Or CHL, where you're living away from home, you're living with a billet family. Like, I mean, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of money, and so I don't begrudge players from making whatever money they're going to make as pros. And one of the first thing that hockey players will often do is repay their parents and take care of their parents when they get that entry level contract, because they know how many sacrifices they made. Because I'm just talking about it from a monetary standpoint. I'm not getting into the amount of time. The amount of time that goes into being a pro athlete, the amount of time that goes into all the workouts, the amount of time you're spending, again, away from family, away from friends, just to get yourself ready to become a National Hockey League player. And then you make it to the NHL, and the fans boo you off the ice, or you have a bad game, and suddenly you're back down in the AHL, and you don't know when you're going to get called up. So I really think that if people want to throw stones towards Josh Doan for the fact that his dad was really, really well off, if you want to say it's nepotism, like I said, I've seen examples of nepotism when it comes to the draft, especially, but it's not usually a big deal, right? And so yeah, I wanted to weigh in on that because I think it's too bad that people want to focus on that when, the kid made it to the NHL. He got a couple of goals last night. It's a good story. The Arizona Coyotes, a franchise, a location that needs a good story, and I think Doan's been that. So if you want to have a discussion about how these rich kids, yeah, we can have that discussion. We absolutely can, but it's more of a hockey discussion than it is a Doan family discussion. So the first team to clinch a playoff spot was the New York Rangers last night. They are currently the only team with that little X next to their team name, meaning no matter what happens from here, they are in the playoffs. There's a team that might be able to clinch tonight. We shall see. But for now, the New York Rangers are the only team to have clinched that playoff spot. The Toronto Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner at practice, not full practice. He's wearing one of the extra sweaters, so not full practice. I don't think he's in full contact either. He's, of course, still dealing with that high ankle sprain. Samsonov at practice doing some work with the goalie coach. Initially, it was seen that Samsonov wouldn't miss any time. Then, of course, he misses last night's game, which, based on Sheldon Keefe's comments after, might be for the best. I think that Keefe getting really angry and talking about his players, I don't know, when you do it the first or second time, I think it might have some impact. I do worry that it happens often enough and it gets reported on often enough that I don't know how much impact it has. And I don't know I don't know which players I'd put that loss on last night, but Jake Allen just stole one last night. Like that was Jake Allen with just robbery against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah, Marner shouldn't be that far off, I would think. I don't think you go out and skate around with a high ankle sprain. Again, depending on the nature of the injury. But it's going to be good news for Toronto whenever he does return. So Bill Guerin, who is the general manager for Team USA as we head towards the Olympics and the Four Nations tournament, he wants hopefuls to the Team USA team to go and play in the Worlds. So there's a qualifier for this as well. He understands if you have a family and if you want to be with your family. He understands if you have other complications in your life where you can't go to the World Championships. However, he's saying if you don't have kids, you don't have a family, and you'd rather go to the Caribbean when the season's done, that might say something to him about your commitment to hockey and all that. So, and he also admitted, too, there are players who are automatics. Players that could skip the Worlds, it's not going to matter. They're going to get named to the team. He's thinking more about the guys that are maybe on the bubble, that may make it and may not. And for players who are in that situation, they'd be better off going to the World Championship because when he gets ready to name his team, it's something he's going to keep in mind, is their dedication to the sport and all that fun stuff. So I don't disagree with Bill Guerin on this one necessarily, but I do understand, too, players at the end of an 82-game schedule deciding not to go over and play in the Worlds. We've talked about this before. The World Championships, with when they're scheduled, there's a lot of NHL players that are either A, still playing in the playoffs, or B, they're just all banged up from an NHL season, and they may not feel like going over and playing in the tournament. So we'll see how many end up going, and then maybe double back later and see how many of them make Team USA for the Four Nations Cup or for the Worlds. But yeah, Bill Guerin, I don't think is necessarily in the wrong here. But the headline basically made it sound like, hey, if you want to be on Team USA, you have to go to the Worlds, and that's not exactly what he said. So Annunen, who has been a good call-up, a good backup for the Colorado Avalanche, signed a 2-year extension yesterday worth $833,000 per season. He's currently on a cap hit of $775,000, so it's a nice little raise for him. And I believe it's a one-way contract as well, his current contract being a two-way contract. So it looks like it's going to be Georgiev and Annunen for probably the next couple of years for Colorado. But if anything changes, the nice thing is an $833,000 cap hit. You can bury that in the minors if need be. But he's played well. The back-to-back shutouts, well, they were against Chicago, and you do feel like you kind of need to do the asterisks with that, but it's back-to-back shutouts. And he's played quite well against the good teams as well. So, yeah, we'll see how things go with the goaltending in Colorado. Because if something happens with Georgiev, he's the guy. 2 games tonight in the National Hockey League, both of them early, one starting at 7 Eastern, one starting at 7:30 Eastern, so should be fun. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start between Ottawa and Buffalo. The Senators are 30, 36, and 4 overall. The Buffalo Sabres are 34, 33, and 5. Jack Quinn will return to the lineup for Buffalo. That's the expectation anyways, that they're going to activate him off IR and he'll return to the lineup. Buffalo finds themselves 8 points behind Washington. And I need to mention that because if it's within single digits, I feel like it should be mentioned. But they have to win this one, and they need a whole bunch of help if they're going to get anywhere near a playoff spot. They've won 2 out of 3 against Ottawa. October 24th, Buffalo wins 6-4. December 31st is a 5-1 win for Ottawa. January 11th, a 5-3 win for Buffalo. So the Sabres trying to win the season series. The Senators trying to have a saw-off, a tie in the 4-game set this year. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific start between the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is the 4th and final meeting as well until the playoffs. I would not be surprised to see these teams meet in the playoffs at some point again soon. November 20th, it's a 5-4 win for Tampa Bay between these two. January 6th, it was a 7-3 win for Boston. February 13th, a 3-2 shootout victory for Tampa Bay. So it'll be interesting to see which team shows up tonight on both sides of the ice, but 2 of the 3 matchups have gone to extra time. I would not be surprised if it does, and if it does, Boston's in the playoffs. 1 point will clinch them a playoff spot. The Bruins are 42, 16, and 15. They are 2 points ahead of Florida. Florida still has that game in hand, so Boston needs to keep winning. Tampa Bay's 39, 25, and 7, and don't look now, they're 4 points behind Toronto. So with a win tonight, Tampa Bay pull within 2 points of Toronto. I know some spots look like they're set. They're really not set. And coming out of last night's game between New Jersey and Toronto does look somewhat vulnerable. We'll see how they respond in the next game. But yeah, Tampa Bay's been playing some really, really good hockey lately. And I wouldn't rule out Tampa Bay maybe getting third. So if Florida did rally and end up finishing first in the division, that would leave us with Boston and Tampa Bay in the first round. So let me know your picks in the comment section below, as always, or let me know your thoughts on anything being discussed here. And again, if you want to get mad about, kids from rich families making it to the NHL, that's the nature of the beast. A lot of families can't afford it. And I do wonder, how many really good potential hockey players haven't ended up having a pro career just because their family can't afford to put them through everything. So it is definitely something I know they're trying to make up for. There are a lot of programs now that are out there that may not have been out there 20, 30 years ago. And hopefully that helps to close the gap. So some of the poorer kids from poorer families, can have their chance as well. But thank you guys so much for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for everything. I will talk to you again soon.